A lot of it is so unpredictable, though. I mean, we've looked at the jury and you try to figure out who might be thinking what. You do, a version of profiling in your head. What does this person look like? Where have I encountered a person like this before, and what have they told me? I think that that's futile. I mean, I don't think it. I know it's futile because, Catherine, you've said it's futile to me a number of times. I heard again somebody saying that the jury was very much on the side of Michael Cohen, and I thought of you.
Yeah, you can never tell. I always convinced myself that one juror was looking at me in a certain way and hated me, and then as a prosecutor, I would get a conviction. So I gave that up years ago. What will happen, depending on how long they deliberate, often, if this jury does it, you'll see a note will come out, and then you're like, they're focused on that, or, oh, that's a good thing, they're focused on that. So if this jury is deliberating and then a note comes out for a particular question, we might get a sense. But even that could just be one juror wants to have a question asked.
We usually have a sense of where it's going depending on the length of deliberations. A shorter deliberation, in our experience, has delivered a guilty verdict. In the past court cases we've followed.
O.J. Simpson was very quick, and it was a acquittal. So it's very hard to determine.
Do they have a relationship now? There's something about being in the trenches with someone.
Sure. Yeah.
And they've been having lunch together, and nobody else can understand what they're going through. It's not surprising to me that Andrea was the person on her jury who everybody turned to. I mean, come on, it's Andrea Mitchell.
No, but it was a woman's case.
Well,
and it was very heavily.
I don't think it matters what case it is. I think Andrea Mitchell's going to be in it anyway. We're all, if we're in a jury room, we're going to listen to what Andrea has to say. Having said that, I've often heard it is the jury foreman who generally is the most influential. But is that true? And have relationships developed by now that might disprove that?
Well, you have to understand one thing. They are prohibited from talking about the case at this point.
But they get a sense of each other.
So unless they're sitting there in abject silence, they're talking to each other about everything but the case. And do relationships form? Sure. They're casual and they're congenial, and people talk about where they live and where they grew up and family and college and things like that, or whatever strikes them. The Knicks losing in the playoffs to the Pacers.
Oh, but knife to the heart, Chuck.
How does the foreman get chosen? The forewoman?
In New York, it's the first person.
Yeah.
So it's just juror number one.
It's automatic.
And often they're like, me? So, and that person is the one who sends out the notes. That's the person who, when they announces the verdict.
Lawyers on the jury, I imagine that
it depends on the type of lawyer. Are they lawyers who are, milquetoast? Or are they lawyers who are going to be like, I'm taking over because I'm a lawyer? Other jurors might be offended by that because they're all supposed to be equal. So it's unclear.
I'm with Catherine. I think it's hazardous to try and ascribe certain traits to certain people based on what they do for a living or, what they look like during trial, whether they're attentive or inattentive. I might have my eyes closed and be listening to everything. Someone else might be taking notes that turn out just to be scribbles and doodles. You can't.
Some people actually do sketches, like court sketches, while they're sitting here at this
It's
desk.
impossible to figure out what a juror
Are you
is.
calling me out?
Me? No, I want to go to Lisa Rubin because, Lisa, I've told you've been nodding as we're having this conversation about the jury.
Yeah, I was thinking about an experience I had with a jury not so long ago myself. I was on a criminal case, Chris, in 2017 and 2018, where one of the jurors was reading a book during every break and every sidebar that is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F Word. And I have to tell you, on our side, the defense side, we were mesmerized by this book, which the juror sort of ostentatiously displayed like this during every break, trying to determine what signal is this juror trying to send to us? And the answer was no signal at all. It was a book that happened to be interesting to him or her. The jury convicted my client. I was also thinking about the E. Jean Carroll jury in the most recent case when Robbie Kaplan, who is E. Jean Carroll's lead lawyer, was summing up her case. There were a number of jurors who wouldn't look at her and were almost staring down the barrel of the courtroom rather than give her their attention. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a bad sign. They're not engaged with her. They're not engaged with the case. And when Alina Habba came up, by comparison, the entire jury was rapt. They couldn't take their eyes off of her. And yet none of that had anything to do with the ultimate verdict in that case, which was to find that E. Jean Carroll was entitled to $8.3 million, as I recall. So I agree with Chuck and Catherine that trying to read juror behavior is an exercise in total futility. That doesn't mean that lawyers don't do it, particularly because it is a stress release during trials like this. But trying to understand what these jurors are thinking is just useless for all of us, as curious as we all are about what they must be thinking right now.
Well, I'm just wondering also, to you members of the bar here, how realistic is it to assume that when Judge Merchan at the end of the day says, don't discuss it and we'll be back next week, that they will go through Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Memorial Day, and come back on Tuesday and never having talked to this case to children,
I think that's
partners,
interesting, though,
spouses.
But at the same time,
That's
when
impossible
you
to
leave work,
imagine.
do you want to talk about the 4 hours of coverage that we did? I
Yes.
stopped talking about it.
No, I do.
I stopped talking about it.
But I mean, you can't talk to anyone else outside your sphere, but you're not even supposed to talk to your family. Chuck, is it realistic to think that they'll go through all of Memorial Day and not talk to a husband, a wife, or a partner?
This is a great question about human nature, and less a great question about this particular jury. Some people will strictly abide the judge's decisions. Others will probably go home and Google up the trial and read things they shouldn't read. People are people. I mean, Katie and Andrea, your answers to one another just now about what you do when you go home. You don't talk about work, and you do.
And you're the one whose spouse is an anchorman and a
He
journalist.
asks me, and I say, "Go read the New York Times," or watch my show back. I'm not rehashing it all.
I turn on MSNBC.
So you have a dozen different people, and perhaps they're doing a dozen different things. My sense, however, is that most really, truly try to abide by the judge's instructions, because I think most jurors take the service very seriously.
But there is, in this case, my ring is hitting the table, I'm sorry. It's not just any case. It's a trial of a former president. I can't imagine that they don't go back and say, something about Donald Trump and his manner, or what it was like to be in that room. I mean, how could you not?
I don't know how you could not, other than to say that if I were on the jury, I would not. But different people
Chuck
do it.
Rosenberg is a rule follower.
I'm a rule follower. But
I don't know. Chuck and I have robbed a lot of banks over the years.
I want to make sure I bring in criminal defense attorney Danny Savalos. So, Danny, look, this charging conference that is going to come up. What are you expecting out of it?
I expect it's going to be a significant event. I mean, there's been a lot of talk of, hey, the defense closes, then we'll just get into closing arguments. I think the charging conference is going to take a long time, especially in a case like this. This is not like a robbery. This is not a gun case where it's easy to wrap your mind around the legal concepts. Even in cases like that, charging conferences can take a while because the lawyers have very disparate views about what the jury instructions should be. And a lot of times, if you're the defense, especially in federal court, there's a set book of jury instructions, and often the defense is kind of arguing for a change of those instructions that favors the defense, and they're probably not going to win. But in a case like this, where you have these kind of novel applications of the law, I think there's going to be some hotly contested language. Just like Lisa pointed out, I think one of the huge pieces of definition that we need to get to is what is to cause someone to make a false entry. And then also, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of debate about the intent to defraud includes an intent to do a bunch of other things that it lists in the statute. Does that mean that, how much intent does that mean? You start getting into these strange philosophical areas of, my intent to defraud includes another intent. Does it have to be the entire intent? My reading of it is that even if it's 1% of your intent included the intent to cause, to conceal another crime, I think that probably suffices. But that's probably what we're going to see argued out during the charging conference. And I can't express just how critical jury instructions are. They're the whole case. When you look at appeals, the majority of appeals in criminal cases have to do with jury instructions or complaints about jury instructions. They're often your best shot on appeal. So jury instructions, are critical. They're quietly important because you know why? On TV and in movies, they don't have a charging conference scene. It's not exciting, it's not sexy, but it is quietly one of the most important events, far more important in my view than opening statements or closing arguments or summation. Charging conferences, the jury instructions that the jury gets, they believe those. They take them as gospel. They don't take as gospel necessarily opening statements or closing arguments. But the jury instructions, those come from the judge. And in fact, most attorneys in their closing will incorporate the jury instructions that they like, because it shows a kind of, in their view, a solidarity with the judge. Remember what the judge tells you, because it's exactly what I'm telling you, and keep this particular instruction in mind. Most of the time, the prosecution, they take them, put them on a PowerPoint, stick it right up there on the screen.